30 short automotive engineering questions and answers on automatic transmission. 1. What is the primary function of a torque converter? 2. Multiply or can transfer power. 2. What is the purpose of transmission fluid? To lubricate, cool, and transmit power. 3. What is a common symptom of low transmission fluid? Slipping or hesitation. 4. How often should transmission fluid be changed? Every 30,000 to 60,000 miles. 5. What is a solenoid in an automatic transmission? An electrohydraulic valve. 6. What is the purpose of a transmission cooler? To cool the transmission fluid. 7. What is a common cause of transmission slipping? Low fluid level, worn-out clutch packs or bands. 8. How do you check transmission fluid level? Consult owner's manual, check dipstick. 9. What is a dual-clutch transmission DCT? A type of automatic transmission. 10. What is a continuously variable transmission CVT? A type of automatic transmission. 11. What is the benefit of a CVT? Improve fuel efficiency, smoother acceleration. 12. What is a common problem with CVTs? Slipping, hesitation, belt wear. 13. Can I tow a trailer with an automatic transmission vehicle? Yes, with certain restrictions. 14. How does temperature affect transmission performance? High temperatures degrade performance. 15. Can I use synthetic transmission fluid? Yes, it's optional. 16. What is the primary function of a transmission filter? To filter transmission fluid. 17. How often should the transmission filter be replaced? Every 30,000 to 60,000 miles. 18. What is a transmission rebuild? Replacing worn-out parts and reassembling. 19. What is the difference between repair and replacement? Repair fixes a specific issue. Replacement installs a new transmission. 20. Can I upgrade my automatic transmission? Yes, to a high-performance transmission. 21. What is a shift solenoid? An electrohydraulic valve controlling gear shifts. 22. What is the purpose of a transmission pressure sensor? To monitor transmission pressure. 23. What is a common symptom of a faulty shift solenoid? Slipping or hesitation. 24. Can I drive with a faulty shift solenoid? No, it's not recommended. 25. What is a transmission range sensor? A sensor monitoring gear position. 26. What is the purpose of a transmission speed sensor? To monitor transmission speed. 27. What is a common symptom of a faulty transmission speed sensor? Slipping or hesitation. 28. Can I repair a faulty transmission speed sensor myself? No, it's a complex repair. 29. What is a transmission cooler line? A line carrying transmission fluid to the cooler. 30. What is the purpose of a transmission mount? To support the transmission. 32 question and answers on operating principles of a manual transmission. 1. Which gears may be shifted in and out of mesh in a manual transmission? Reverse only. 2. What are the three purposes of a transmission? 1. Multiply torque. 2. Neutral or brake path of power. 3. Reverse or change direction. 2. What is the main purpose of a transmission? Multiply torque. 3. What is the center point of a gear to its outer edge referred to as? Radius. 6. What is another term used for drive and driven gears? Input shaft and output shaft. 7. What are the three-part principles that govern the relationship between gear size, torque and speed output? 1. Same size, same speed and torque, but rotation reverses. To small gear driving a big gear. Torque multiplies, speed reduced and rotation reverses. 3. Big gear driving a small gear. Reduced torque, speed increase and rotation reverses. 8. How is horsepower increased in a vehicle? Gears multiply torque but speed and torque must be increased. 9. What are the three transmission classifications? Manual 5 speed or automatic. Aluminum. Forward gear. Overdrive. Objective to trace the path of power. 10. In which gear is the input shaft directly connected to the output shaft? Underscore for TH gear. 3. When do the output gears rotate freely on the main shaft? All gears except when that gear is locked, select D. 11. Under what conditions does the countershaft rotate? All gears when the engine is running and the clutch is engaged. 12. Under what conditions are the output gears rotating? All conditions when the engine is running and the clutch is engaged. 13. Under what condition do the output gears transfer torque? Only when that gear is selected. 14. What are the synchronizers directly splined to? The output or main shaft. 15. How are gears locked to the output shaft? Through the synchronizer's sleeve and hub. 16. In a manual transmission, which gears are rotating with the engine running and the clutch engaged? All gears running except reverse Adler. Objective 3 gear designs, ratios and torque. 17. What are the two most common gears used in a manual transmission? 1 spur gear to helical gear. 18. What type of shafts must spur and helical gears have in relationship to each other? Parallel shafts running side by side with each other. 19. What occurs in spur gears as wear increases? Backlash and noise increases. 20. What two factors make helical gears stronger than spur gears? Longer teeth, more surface contact. 21. What makes helical gears quieter than spur? Sliding motion in and out of mesh. 23. In manual transmissions, what two components are used to control end thrust? Thrust washers and snap rings. 24. What does the gear ratio comparison mean when expressed to 1? The amount of drive gear revolution required to make the output gear rotate 1 complete revolution. 25. Whenever the gear ratio is greater than 1:1, it is called reduction or underdrive. 26. Why isn't torque multiplication required or reduced at highway speeds? Momentum or inertia will carry the vehicle through load condition. 27. Whenever the gear ratio is less than 1:1, it is called overdrive. 28. Why did manufacturers add an overdrive the manual transmissions? Fuel economy, emissions, NVH. 29. After determining the gear ratio of each pair of gears in the path of power, how is the final ratio calculated and how many decimal places the ratio rounded? Ratios are multiplied to decimal places. Objective for lubrication. 30. What are the four for purposes of lubrication? Reduce friction, cool, clean and seal. 31. What are the three most common lubricants used in manual transmissions? Gear oil, automatic transmission or engine oil. 32. What component in a manual transmission acts as the pump, cluster or countershaft? Here are 30 short exam questions and answers about transaxle. 1. What is a transaxle? A transaxle is a combination of a transmission and an axle in a single unit. 2. What is the main function of a transaxle? Answer: to transmit power from the engine to the wheels. 3. What type of vehicles typically use transaxles? Front-wheel drive vehicles. 4. What are the two main types of transaxles? Manual and automatic. 5. What is the purpose of the differential in a transaxle? To allow the wheels to rotate at different speeds. 6. What is the function of the gears in a transaxle? To change the speed and torque of the power transmission. 7. What is the purpose of the clutch in a manual transaxle? To engage and disengage the power transmission. 8. What is the function of the torque converter in an automatic transaxle? To transfer power from the engine to the transmission. 9. What is the purpose of the transmission fluid in a transaxle? To lubricate and cool the transmission components. 10. What is a common symptom of low transmission fluid in a transaxle? Slipping or hesitation. 11. What is the recommended interval for changing transmission fluid in a transaxle? Typically every 30,000 to 60,000 miles. 12. What is a transaxle mount? A component that supports the transaxle and reduces vibration. 13. What is the purpose of the speed sensor in a transaxle? To monitor the speed of the transmission. 14. What is a common cause of transaxle failure? Lack of maintenance, overheating, or poor lubrication. 15. What is the function of the shift solenoids in an automatic transaxle? To control the gear shifts. 16. What is the purpose of the transaxle case? To house the transmission components. 17. What is a transaxle seal? A component that seals the transmission components. 18. What is the function of the axle shafts in a transaxle? To transmit power from the transmission to the wheels. 19. What is a transaxle bearing? A component that supports the rotating parts of the transmission. 20. What is the purpose of the transaxle breather? To vent the transmission case. 21. What is a common symptom of a faulty transaxle bearing? Noise or vibration. 22. What is the recommended torque specification for transaxle bolts? Varies by manufacturer. 23. What is a transaxle overhaul? A process of rebuilding or replacing the transmission components. 24. What is the purpose of the transaxle cooler? To cool the transmission fluid. 25. What is a common cause of transaxle overheating? Low transmission fluid level, poor cooling, or blockages. 26. What is the function of the transaxle pump? To circulate the transmission fluid. 27. What is a transaxle filter? A component that filters the transmission fluid. 28. What is the recommended interval for replacing the transaxle filter? Typically every 30,000 to 60,000 miles. 29. What is a transaxle gasket? A component that seals the transmission components. 30. What is the purpose of the transaxle diagnostic system? To monitor and diagnose transmission problems. 30 question and answers about automotive suspensions. 1. What is the main function of a suspension system? To provide a smooth ride and maintain vehicle stability. 2. What are the two main types of suspension systems? Independent and solid axle. 3. What is the purpose of a shock absorber? To control the movement of the suspension. 4. What is the function of a spring in a suspension system? To support the weight of the vehicle. 5. What is a coil spring? A type of spring used in suspension systems. 6. What is a leaf spring? A type of spring used in solid axle suspension systems. 7. What is the purpose of a stabilizer bar? To improve vehicle stability and reduce roll. 8. What is a ball joint? A component that connects the control arm to the steering knuckle. 9. What is the function of a control arm? To connect the suspension to the frame. 10. What is a bush in a suspension system? A component that reduces vibration and wear. 11. What is the purpose of a caster angle? To improve vehicle stability and steering. 12. What is camber angle? The angle of the wheel in relation to the vertical plane. 13. What is toe angle? The angle of the wheel in relation to the direction of travel. 14. What is the purpose of a tie rod? To connect the steering rack to the steering knuckle. 15. What is a sway bar link? A component that connects the stabilizer bar to the control arm. 16. What is the function of a shock absorber mount? To secure the shock absorber to the vehicle. 17. What is a common symptom of worn-out shock absorbers? A bouncy or unstable ride. 18. What is the purpose of a suspension inspection? To identify worn-out or damaged components. 19. What is a Mach PH race strut? A type of suspension system that combines the shock absorber and spring. 20. What is the function of a torsion bar? To provide suspension support and stability. 21. What is a strut assembly? A component that combines the shock absorber, spring, and steering knuckle. 22. What is the purpose of a suspension alignment? To adjust the wheel angles to manufacturer specifications. 23. What is a common cause of uneven tire wear? Misaligned suspension or worn-out components. 24. What is the function of a wheel bearing? To support the wheel and allow smooth rotation. 25. What is a hub assembly? A component that combines the wheel bearing and hub. 26. What is the purpose of a suspension upgrade? To improve vehicle performance or stability. 27. What is a coilover? A type of suspension system that combines the shock absorber and spring. 28. What is the function of a rebound spring? To control the rebound of the suspension. 29. What is a common symptom of a worn-out ball joint? Clamping or clicking noise. 30. What is the purpose of a suspension lubrication? To reduce wear and tear on components.
Pistons and connecting rods. Questions and answers. 1. What is the function of a piston? Create turbulence. Receive force from expanding combustion forces. 2. What materials are used to manufacture pistons? Aluminum, hypereutectic aluminum, cast iron. 3. How is piston slap controlled in an engine? Piston pin offset. 4. What are piston balance pads? Area of extra metal that can be removed to balance. Near pin boss. 5. How does the piston expand with heat? Diameter across pin boss expands more material. Piston head expands more closer to combustion. 6. Why are some piston ringlands reinforced? Control heat expansion. Reduce wear. 7. What are the types of piston pin designs? Full floating. Press fit. 8. What are the functions of the piston rings? Seal against gases. Control lubrication. Transfer heat from piston to cylinder wall. 9. What materials are used in piston rings? Cast iron, ductile cast iron, steel alloys, stainless steel, faced with molybdenum or chrome. 10. What is ring side clearance and how is it measured? Space between ring and groove, with a feeler gauge. 11. When would you measure ring end gap and how? When replacing parts or making changes to parts related to piston or cylinder. Ring in cylinder below ring travel, feeler gauge. 12. What are torsional twist rings and how do they work? Have a bevel that is acted on by combustion gases. Twist to seal. Plus twist up to seal against combustion. Rev, twist down to seal oil scrap oil. 13. How are piston rings indexed? Marking on one face of the ring to locate up position. Note ring type in each position. Align gaps as per instructions. 14. List different types of connecting rod designs. Straight offset. Straight cut bias cut. 15. How do manufacturers align the connecting rod caps? Fracture sintered metal, dowel, shoulder on rod bolt. 16. What is the purpose of the connecting rod spit holes? Oil to cylinder wall on major thrust side. 17. How should you remove piston rings? Use piston ring expanders for compression rings. Spiral off oil control rings. 18. How are pressed piston pins removed from the connecting rod? Need a special holder. Use a press. 19. How are pistons cleaned? Pressure washer, light plastic brush, solvent tank, clean grooves with ring scraper or a piece of an old ring. 20. What inspections can be done to connecting rods? Straightness, bore alignment, cracks, size, taper, origin of bores, bearing wear, visual inspection, discoloration. 21. What types of reconditioning can be performed in connecting rods? Resizing bid end bore, replacing fasteners.
Red Seal Automotive Exam Preparation. 1. What does a fuel pressure regulator do? Maintains steady fuel pressure at injectors. 2. Normal EFI fuel pressure at idle. 35-45, psi/200 and 40-310 kPa. 3. Pull vacuum hose off regulator. What happens? Pressure goes up 5-10 psi. 4. EVAP purge valve job. Sends stored fuel vapors to engine to burn. 5. P0171 lean. Fuel system cause. Weak pump, clogged filter, low pressure. 6. Tool to check fuel pump volume. Graduated container and timer. 7. What is deadhead pressure? Max pressure pump makes with return blocked. 8. P0442 code means. EVAP small leak detected. 9. Why test injector resistance unplugged. Avoid false readings and ECM damage. 10. Fuel pump driver module purpose. Controls pump speed on returnless systems. 11. Leaking injector symptom cold start. Hard start, black smoke, fuel smell. 12. Fuel tank pressure sensor job. Monitors tank pressure for EVAP tests. 13. Why GDI needs high pressure pump. Injects into cylinder, must beat compression. 14. Danger of opening GDI line without relieving pressure. Fuel can inject through skin. 15. How to relieve GDI pressure. Scan tool disable pump plus run engine, or wait. 16. GDI fuel rail pressure sensor job. Tells PCM actual rail pressure. 17. P0191 code. Fuel rail pressure sensor issue. 18. TBI uses what injector type? Low pressure, high flow injector in throttle body. 19. Fuel pump inertia switch does what? Cuts pump power in a crash. 20. What causes vapor lock? Heat turns fuel to vapor in lines. 21. Why use returnless fuel systems? Less evap emissions, cooler fuel. 22. Saturated injector resistance. 1217 ohms. 23. Peak and hold injector resistance. 24 ohms. 24. Test for sticking injector. Injector balance test. 25. Fuel trim plus 25% means PCM adding max fuel for lean condition. 26. Charcoal canister purpose. Stores fuel vapors from tank. 27. Stops liquid fuel entering EVAP canister. Rollover overfill limit valve. 28. Stoichiometric ratio for gas. 14.7. 1. 29. Leaner than 14.7. 1 causes higher NOx emissions. 30. Richer than 14.7. 1 causes higher CO and HC. 31. Fuel pump strainer sock job. Filters debris before pump. 32. Restricted fuel filter symptom. Loss of power under load. 33. Most common in tank pump type. Turbine or gerotor pump. 34. Fuel pulse damper purpose. Reduces pressure pulsations noise. 35. EVAP vent valve stuck closed code. P0446. 36. What controls min octane needed? Compression, timing, knock control. 37. E10 fuel stoichiometric ratio. About 14.1. 1. Needs more fuel. 38. Diesel water separator job. Removes water to protect injectors pump. 39. Diesel fuel heater purpose. Stops fuel gelling in cold. 40. Common rail diesel pressure. 10,000, 30,000 psi.
Engine and fuel system diagnosis. Engine cranks but won't start. What's your first check? Check for spark, fuel and compression. No spark ignition system. No fuel system. No compression mechanical issue. What does a black, sooty spark plug indicate? Rich fuel mixture, weak spark, or excessive idle time. Engine has low power and black smoke from exhaust. Likely cause, overfueling or restricted air intake. Check air filter, MEF sensor injectors. What does white smoke from exhaust mean? Coolant entering combustion chamber. Check head gasket, cracked head/block. Fuel pressure is low. What are 3 possible causes? Clogged fuel filter, weak fuel pump, leaking fuel pressure regulator. Engine misfires at idle but smooths out at high RPM. Why? Likely vacuum leak or dirty injector affecting idle mixture more than high RPM. How do you confirm a faulty fuel pump? Check fuel pressure with a gauge and compare to spec. Also check pump current draw and voltage at pump. What does a P0302 code mean? Cylinder 2 misfire detected. Electrical and starting/charging diagnosis. Battery is 12.0 V at rest but drops to 8 V when cranking. Diagnosis: battery is sulfated/faulty. Fails load test. Starter clicks but doesn't turn. What do you check? Battery voltage, battery terminals, ground connections, starter solenoid. Alternator output is 12.8 V with engine running. Is that okay? No. Should be 13.8-14.4 V. Likely faulty alternator or regulator. Parasitic draw test shows 500 milliamperes draw. What's acceptable? Less than 50 milliamperes. 500 milliamperes will drain battery overnight. Headlights dim when using power windows. Cause: high resistance in wiring, weak battery, or weak alternator. How do you test for a voltage drop on a starter circuit? Use multimeter across battery positive and starter terminal during cranking. More than 0.5 V drop indicates high resistance. Brakes diagnosis: brake pedal is spongy. What's wrong? Air in brake system or leaking brake line/caliper. Brake pedal sinks slowly when held down. Diagnosis: internal leak in master cylinder. Vehicle pulls left under braking. Why? Right caliper seized, left caliper working, or uneven pad wear. Squealing noise when braking lightly. Cause: worn brake pads, glazed rotors, or missing anti-squeal shims. Steering and suspension diagnosis: steering wheel shakes at 100 km/h. What do you check? Wheel balance, bent wheel, worn tie rod ends. Clunking noise over bumps. Likely cause, worn sway bar links, ball joints, or strut mounts. Vehicle wanders on road. Diagnosis, worn tie rod ends, loose wheel bearings, or incorrect alignment. Uneven tire wear on outer edge. What does it indicate? Excessive positive camber or underinflation. Drivetrain diagnosis, whining noise that changes with vehicle speed. Where from? Differential or wheel bearing. Pitch changes with speed. Clunk when engaging drive from park. Cause, worn U-joint, diff backlash too large, or worn engine mount. Manual gearbox grinds going into second gear. Why? Worn synchro ring for second gear, or clutch not fully disengaging. Cooling and exhaust diagnosis. Engine overheats at idle but cools at highway speed. Cause, faulty cooling fan, fan clutch, or low coolant flow. Coolant loss but no visible leak. Where could it go? Into combustion chamber via head gasket, or into oil via oil cooler. Loud rattling from under car during acceleration. Likely, loose exhaust heat shield, or failing catalytic converter substrate. General diagnostic process. What's the first step in any diagnosis? Verify the customer's complaint. Drive the vehicle and confirm the symptom yourself. What does diagnostic flowchart help with? It gives a logical, step-by-step process to isolate the fault without replacing parts randomly. Want me to make these into flashcards you can quiz yourself with? 1. What is the main function of a standard differential? A. Allow wheels on the same axle to rotate at different speeds when cornering. 2. What noise indicates worn pinion bearings during acceleration? A whining noise that increases with acceleration. 3. What noise indicates excessive backlash on deceleration? A whining noise that occurs when coasting or decelerating. 4. What does constant whining at all speeds usually mean? A low or contaminated differential oil. 5. What causes a growling noise that changes with vehicle speed? A worn carrier or side bearings. 6. What causes a clunk when shifting from park to drive? A. Excessive backlash, worn U-joints, or worn axle splines. 7. Is it normal for one wheel to spin freely while the other stays still with the rear lifted? A. Yes, that is normal for an open differential. 8. What seal leaks oil from the rear of the differential? A pinion seal. 9. What seal leaks oil from the wheel end? A. Axle shaft seal. 10. What is the fix for oil leaking from the diff cover? A replace gasket or RTV and torque bolts to spec. 11. What does milky or brown differential oil indicate? A water contamination through breather or seals. 12. Are metal flakes on the magnetic drain plug normal? A fine paste is normal where large chunks are not. 13. Name 3 causes of differential overheating. A low oil level, wrong oil viscosity, excessive preload. 14. Can a differential cause vibration at 60 to 80 km per hour? A usually not checked drive shaft and U-joints first. 15. How do you measure differential backlash? A use a dial indicator on the ring gear while holding the pinion stationary. 16. What adjustment moves gear contact toward the toe of the gear? A decreased pinion shim thickness to move pinion closer. 17. What adjustment moves gear contact toward the heel of the gear? A. Increased pinion shim thickness to move pinion away. 18. What does an outplay on the pinion indicate? A worn pinion bearings or loose pinion nut. 19. What causes excessive axle shaft end float? A worn C-clip, worn side gears, or worn axle shaft. 20. Why does noise disappear when turning left? The right side bearing is unloaded and likely worn. 21. Why would a differential lock up in tight turns? A wrong oil in LSD, or see spider gears in open diff. 22. How do you test if a differential is open or locked? A lift both wheels and rotate one wheel opposite direction means open. 23. What does burnt smelling differential fluid indicate? A. Overheating from low level, wrong oil, or excessive load. 24. Why would noise get worse after a differential rebuild? A. Incorrect backlash, pinion depth, or bearing preload. 25. What holds an axle shaft in the housing on a C-clip axle? A C-clip inside the differential carrier. 26. What causes clicking on turns with a solid axle? A worn axle shaft splines or worn side gears. 27. How do you check pinion bearing preload? A measure rotating torque on pinion nut with inch-pound wrench. 28. What causes a chirp noise on takeoff? A dry or worn slip yoke on drive shaft. 29. Why is the differential noisy only when towing? A. Increased load exposes worn gears or low oil level. 30. Why would a new axle seal leak again after 1 week? A grooved axle shaft, bent tube, or damaged seal surface.
Engine mechanical diagnosis. 2. What is a wet compression test and what information does it provide? Compression test repeated with 1 teaspoon of oil added to cylinder through the spark plug hole. If cylinder compression goes up by more than 5%, the seal failure is at the piston rings to cylinder wall. 3. What is a leak down test and what information does it provide? The leakage tester pressurizes the cylinders with a metered flow of air and measures how well the cylinder retains that air pressure. Leakage of 20% is acceptable. Leakage greater than 30% is excessive. Helps to pinpoint the exact location of compression loss. 4. What is the proper procedure to disconnect fuel lines? Relieve fuel system pressure first. Use correct tools. Special tools may be required. 5. How are friction bearing clearances checked by a technician? Confirm with plastic gauge. 6. What can cause a vacuum gauge to flicker? Issue related to one cylinder's function relative to the rest. 7. What can cause white smoke on the exhaust system? Burning coolant. 8. List noise detection tools and how can engine noises be isolated or pinpointed? Acoustic stethoscope, solid needle, hollow tube, moving parts, chassis ear. These tools amplify sounds to help pinpoint the origin. Chassis ear may allow for sound recording. 10. What information can be obtained from spark plug diagnosis? Normal spark plug of the correct heat range, light traces of deposits that are light gray to tan, minimal wear, no cracks or carbon tracks on in the insulator, moderate red, brown, yellow or white deposits for fuel additives and mild oil consumption may result in an intermittent misfire. Glazed deposits on the insulator core nose indicate melting of certain deposits on the insulator. Deposits can become conductive, shorting out the spark plug. Soft, dry, black, powdery deposit on the spark plug eye. Carbon-fouled spark plugs caused by a rich air-fuel mixture. Very conductive. Will short out the spark plug, causing misfire. Heavy light gray to tan dry deposits. The burning of a small amount of oil over a long period of time. Eventually short out the spark plug, causing misfire. Usually caused by consumption of oil leaking past the valve guides or valve seals. Wet and black fouling. Excessive oil consumption. Usually consumption of oil leaking past the piston rings shorts out the plug, causing misfire. Badly eroded electrodes and a burned or blistered insulator tip. Pre-ignition damage to a spark plug. Detonation damage to a spark plug. A ground electrode torn off. Heat shock can result in a fractured insulator core nose, caused by a rapid increase in tip temperature. Section severe operating conditions. Section poor grade of fuel. Section excessively advanced ignition timing. Excessive heat damage is caused by the inability to conduct heat away from the spark plug due to insufficient torquing of the spark plug. 11. What can cause low oil pressure and the oil gauge to flicker? Excessive connecting rod bearing clearances. 12. What can cause normal oil pressure and a damaged crankshaft main bearing journal? Insufficient bearing clearance. Foreign material. 13. What are the first steps in any vehicle diagnosis? Verify customer concern. Preliminary checks, visual or operational. Perform published diagnostic system checks. Check for bulletin.
Module M, Exhaust Systems Master. 1. What is the purpose of the exhaust system? To provide a path for exhaust to safely leave the engine. Mufflers cool exhaust, reduce exhaust pressure, and reduce exhaust noise. Resonators reduce exhaust noise. Catalytic converters reduce harmful exhaust emissions. 2. What is the purpose of the oxygen sensor in the exhaust system? Upstream, before catalytic converter, detects oxygen levels in exhaust. ECU uses this valve to set air-fuel mixture. Downstream, after catalytic converter, compares oxygen levels in exhaust after CAT to levels before to determine catalyst efficiency. 3. How do mufflers work? Perforated tubes inside the muffler cancel out and silence the pressure pulsations set up in the exhaust each time an exhaust valve opens. The increased volume of the muffler allows the gases to expand as they enter the muffler. Rapid expansion causes the gases to be cooled. 4. What is a back pressure test and what is used to perform this test? Pressure gauge installed before the catalytic converter. Hold the engine's speed at 2000 revolutions per minute and watch the gauge. Pressure reading should be less than 1.25 psi. Restricted flow will give a reading greater than 2.75 psi. See SI for specifics on RPM and pressure specs. 5. How can you check the catalytic converter efficiency? Delta temperature test should be an increase of at least 38 degrees Celsius, 100 F, from the inlet temperature to the temperature reading just behind the converter. If the outlet temperature is the same as or lower than the inlet temperature, nothing is happening inside the converter. Module and lubrication systems. 6. What creates oil pressure in the engine? Oil flow from the pump and restrictions in the oil system, bearing clearances, timed restrictions, metering, etc. 7. What controls maximum and minimum oil pressures? Oil pressure relief valve spring. 8. What can cause excessively high oil pressure? Wrong viscosity of oil, too thick. Oil pressure relief valve closed. 9. What are the two types of oil pumps commonly used? Rotor, gear. 10. How does the oil flow through a plugged oil filter? Though the oil filter bypass valve in block and or in filter. 11. What are oil coolers and what different types of coolers are commonly used? Oil coolers are heat exchangers that transfer heat out of the engine oil, cool the oil. Oil to air, oil to coolant. 12. List causes that can result in no oil pressure, low oil level, a pressure relief valve in the pump that is stuck open, a broken or twisted off oil pump drive, a plugged pickup screen or tube. 13. List causes that can result in a low oil pressure, low oil level, improper oil viscosity, a worn pump, worn engine bearings or shafts, a blocked oil pump inlet, a weak oil pump pressure relief valve spring, aerated or 14. What is a PCV system and how does it work? Positive crankcase ventilation system allows HC in the crankcase to be drawn into the engine and burned, maintains crankcase pressure. 15. What can result if a PVC system has a restriction? High crankcase pressures result. Forces oil past the engine seals, forces oil back into the engine intake manifold. 16. When does the PCV system work at its maximum capacity? Full engine conditions.
Modules I and J. Cylinder head assemblies, theory and service. 1. List different types of cylinder head designs. A valves per cylinder, multivalve. 2. What is the most efficient cylinder head design and why? Multivalve. O. Total area of valves is larger, better airflow. O. Smaller valves, a lighter, less inertia load on valvetrain. O. Can stage a multi-valves, better swirl of air fuel, better mixing. 3. What is a pre-combustion chamber and where is it used? Chamber outside of but connected to the combustion chamber, where fuel is injected. Indirect diesel injection. 4. What is the purpose of the cylinder heads? Seals the top of the cylinder head. Contains a combustion chamber. Provides intake and exhaust ports. Guides and seats for the valves. May have bores and caps for camshaft. May have rockers arms, rocker shafts, cam followers, etc. Oil and coolant galleries. Mounting for external components. 5. What is the purpose of the valves? Provide a means of sealing the cylinder during compression and power. Open to let intake charge in. Close to allow exhaust to leave. 6. How are valves cooled? 75% heat transfer though valve seat. 25% heat transfer though valve guide. Intake valves receive some cooling from intake charge. 7. What is the purpose of sodium-filled valves? To transfer heat from the valve stem to guide more efficiently. Valve will run about 15% cooler than a solid-stemmed valve. Heavy-duty applications or where more cooling is required. 8. Identify the following terms. 1. Valve tip. The upper end of the valve that is in contact with the valve operating mechanism. 2. Valve keepers. Hold the spring retainer on the valve. 3. Valve stem. A machined part of the valve that extends from the neck to the tip of the valve. 4. Fillet or neck. The transitional part of the valve from the stem to the head. Its smooth radius provides strength. 5. Valve head. The largest part of the valve that is exposed to the combustion chamber. The outside diameter of the head equals the valve size. 6. Valve face. The smooth machined surface that seals against the valve seat in the cylinder head. 7. Valve margin. The material between the face and the head. The margin supports the valve face and provides material for heat absorptio. 9. What is the purpose of the valve springs? To close the valve and to hold the valve margin against the seat with a specified amount of pressure. To seal and transfer heat away from the valve. 10. What is a damper coil used for? To dampen valve spring oscillations at higher engine speeds. Helps prevent valve float. 11. What is valve spring installed height? The length of the valve spring when installed on the cylinder head, with the valve closed. 12. How can valve spring installed height be corrected after head rebuilding? Yes, install special washer to shim under the spring, reduce installed height. 13. How are the valves secured in place? Keepers hold valve above the spring retainer. Retainer sits on spring presses on the head. 15. How are valve guide clearances measured? Wobble method. Directly measure valve stem and valve guide in most worn areas. Valve guide dial bore gauge. 16. Why do intake and exhaust valve seats have different widths? Exhaust valves contact over a wider area. Exhaust valves need more contact to increase cooling. 17. What is the valve margin and what is its purpose? The material between the face and the head. The margin supports the valve face and provides material for heat absorption. 18. What is valve seat concentricity? Is the valve seat center line the same as the valve guide center line? 19. How can valves be bench tested for leaks? Vacuum check.
1. What are the 4 strokes of an internal combustion engine listed in order? Intake, compression, power, exhaust. 2. In what position are the valves and piston during the intake stroke? Intake valve open, exhaust valve closed, piston moving from TDC to BDC. 3. On a naturally aspirated engine, what happens to volumetric efficiency? As engine speed increases, volumetric efficiency decreases. 4. For parts identification, the left or right side of the engine is determined while viewing the engine from what position? Behind flywheel facing forwards. 5. The compression ratio of a diesel engine is high enough to cause the air being compressed to be heated to what point? Spontaneous combustion point, kindling point. 6. What is the area above the piston at TDC called? Clearance volume or compression volume. 7. What is the flash point of combustion? Some vapor is created, but it is not hot enough to burn if the ignition source is removed. 8. What are some alternative fuels? Diesel, propane, natural gas, ethanol. 9. What modifications are required to convert an engine to an alternative fuel? Fuel delivery, fuel storage. Engine needs to withstand the fuel X. LPG needs harder valve seats. 10. What is the purpose of forced induction? Improve volumetric efficiency. 201. B engine blocks. 1. What is the purpose of a cylinder block? Rigid foundation for rotating assembly, coolant and lubrication passages, mounting points for other components. 2. What is the
201B engine blocks. 1. What is the purpose of a cylinder block? Rigid foundation for rotating assembly, coolant and lubrication passages, mounting points for other components. 2. What is the strongest part of the cylinder block and why? Webs. They need to be able to withstand all of the forces from combustion. 3. What type of casting processes are used in automotive applications? Sand casting, die casting, lost foam casting. 4. Describe die casting Siamese cylinders characteristics. No coolant between cylinders. Very accurate shapes can be made. No internal voids top of cylinders not connected to deck. 5. What is open or closed deck blocks? Open, clearance around head bolt hole. Closed, direct connection from head both to cylinder. 6. What are integral cylinders? Cut out of the block material. 7. What advantages do multi-piece engine blocks provide? More rigid. Reduce noise and vibration. 8. What type of cylinder liners are used in automotive applications? Die. 9. What is the difference between cylinder liners and sleeves? Liner, it is the cylinder. Sleeve repair. 10. What can clean scale and rust from water jackets inside the block? High temperature oven. 11. List different methods of crack detection. Diamagnetic and penetrant. Magnet and ferrous dust. Pressure. 12. How and where should the block be measured for deck straightness? Feeler strip straight edge. Minimum 3 place. 0.00 for max. 13. How is the main bearing bore alignment checked or measured? Feeler strip straight edge. Minimum 6 places. Note more than 1/2 minimum spec for new bearing. 14. When measuring bores, how can taper and out of round be determined? Size max. Out of round difference around bore. Taper difference top to bottom. Bore gauge. Telescoping gauge and micrometer. 15. What location on a cylinder bore will have the most wear? Top of ring travel. Perpendicular to crank. 16. How can cylinder bores be repaired if they are worn? Machine oversize. A double taper, add 0.010 and next oversize up. B. New oversize pistons and rings. Sleeve. A 1-cylinder. B. Crank less than length of bore. 17. How can damaged threads be repaired in an engine block? Insert solid is best helicoil. 18. How do you calculate the amount of cylinder bore oversize? Double taper, add 0.010 and next oversize up. 19. What is line boring? Brings main bearing bores into alignment, fix size, taper and out. 21. What is the purpose of cross-hatching a cylinder bore? Surface finish to retain lubrication film at the correct quantity. Ring seating. 201 C&D crankshaft. 1. What is the purpose of the crankshaft? Change reciprocating motion to rotational motion. 2. Where are the fillets located? And what purpose do they serve? At edge of the journals. Relieve stress at that corner. 3. What are crankshaft counterweights and what is their purpose? Extra mass on the crank. Balance out, equalize inertia from piston and rods. 4. How are the connecting rod journals and bearings lubricated? Oil passages on crank. Squat pressure. Hydrodynamic wedging. 5. What manufacturing processes are used to produce crankshafts? Cast. Forge. CNC. 6. What is the purpose of a split-throw journal crankshaft and what engine uses it? To allow for correct spacing between journals but fit in a specific V-angle block. 7. What types of friction bearings designs are commonly used? Bimetal. Trimetal. Split shell. Full circle. Plane. 8. List all the qualities friction bearings must have: air, fatigue strength, conformability, embedability, surface action, corrosion resistance, temperature strength, thermal conductivity. 9. What is the main thrust bearing and where is it located? Control crankshaft end play. On crankshaft main bearing perpendicular to journal off edges. 10. What are the two purposes of bearing spread? Snap into place. Reduce collapse against crankshaft. 11. What holds the friction bearing in place during operation? Bearing crush. 12. What is an internally balanced engine? Only need counter weights to balance. 13. What ways can an engine be balanced externally? Flywheel. Flex plate torque converter. Harmonic balancer. Balance shafts. 14. What damage can occur if an engine is out of balance? Crankshaft breakage. 15. When a harmonic balance is used? Longer crankshafts. Higher performance. 16. List 3 types of engine vibrations. A. Primary. Unbalanced rotating mass or crank rods, pistons. B. Secondary. Inertia pistons and connecting rods reciprocating vertical motion. C. Rocking couple. End-to-end motion often in V6. D. Fifth order. Odd firing engines. 17. List different ways used to inspect crankshafts or cracks or damage. Diamagnetic and penetrant. Magnet and ferrous dust. 18. How are crankshaft journals repaired if they have excessive taper or out of round? Machine undersize. 19. What is the purpose of the flywheel? Smooth out power pulses by absorbing and releasing energy. 20. A crankshaft journal has been reground. What type of friction bearings are required? Undersized journal is smaller. 201 E&F pistons and connecting rods. 1. What is the function of a piston? Create turbulence. Receive force from expanding combustion forces. 2. What materials are used to manufacture pistons? Aluminum. Hypereutectic aluminum. Cast iron. 3. How is piston slap controlled in an engine? Piston pin offset. 4. What are piston balance pads? Area of extra metal that can be removed balance. Near-pin boss. 5. How does the piston expand with heat? Diameter across pin boss expands more material. Piston head expands more closer to combustion. 6. Why are some piston ring lands reinforced? Control heat expansion. Reduce wear. 7. What are the types of piston pin designs? Full floating. Press fit. 8. What are the functions of the piston rings? Seal against gases. Control lubrication. Transfer heat from piston to cylinder wall. 9. What materials are used in piston rings? Cast iron. Ductile cast iron. Steel alloys. Stainless steel. Faced with molybdenum or chrome. 10. What is ring side clearance and how is it measured? Space between ring and groove. With a feeler gauge. 11. When would you measure ring end gap and how? When replacing parts or making changes to parts related to piston or cylinder. Ring in cylinder below ring travel, feeler gauge. 12. What are torsional twist rings and how do they work? Have a bevel that is acted on by combustion gases. Twist to seal. Plus twist up to seal against combustion. Rev twist down to seal loyal scrap oil. 13. How are piston rings indexed? Marking on one face of the ring to locate up position. Note ring type in each position. Align gaps as per instructions. 14. List different types of connecting rod designs. Straight offset. Straight cut by a scut. 15. How do manufacturers align the connecting rod caps? Fracture sintered metal. Dowel. Shoulder on-rod bolt. 16. What is the purpose of the connecting rod spit holes? Oiled cylinder wall on major thrust side. 17. How should you remove piston rings? Use piston ring expanders for compression rings. Spiral off oil control rings. 18. How are press piston pins removed from the connecting rod? Need a special holder. Use a press. 19. How are pistons cleaned? Pressure washer. Light plastic brush. Solvent tank. Clean grooves with ring scraper or a piece of an old ring. 20. What inspections can be done to connecting rods? Straightness, bore alignment. Cracks. Size, taper, organ of bores. Bearing wear. Visual inspection, discoloration. 21. What types of reconditioning can be performed in connecting rods? Resizing bit end bore. Replacing fasteners.